Hi, welcome back to MikiCarrBeauty. I'm Miki, and on my channel I love to talk about luxury skincare and beauty and sometimes luxury goods. And today I'm finally getting my review up of the new Natasha Denona Yucca palette. And if you're interested in seeing me do two looks on my eyes and then my initial thoughts, then keep watching. Before we continue, remember to hit the subscribe button below and click all to get notification of all my videos. And then a comment and a like below helps out my channel. And with that out of the way, let's begin. And I did two different looks, one for each eye. This is definitely a first impressions, and unfortunately I received my palette much later than everyone. I actually ordered through Beautylish because I'm here on the West Coast, and I was supposed to get them a lot earlier, at least this palette, and there was a snafu for the first time ever. I actually didn't receive my palette. It was a snafu from Beautylish's part, and they apologized and they just forgot to put the palette in, and so they gave me my freebie in my order and then the Macrotech eyeliner, but the palette was missing. So they quickly sent the palette, but I didn't get it till today, and I'm filming on a Sunday. I think this is such a beautiful palette. Why don't I tell you a little bit about the palette? I'm just reading from her website. The Yucca Eyeshadow Palette, introducing Natasha Denona's 2023 palette of the summer. The Yucca palette is a perfect balance of green, brown hues for earthy everyday or shimmering statement summer looks. Her iconic buttery smooth formulas provide all-day wear and seamless applications, including 4 new shades in Natasha's latest sparkling foiled formula. And it says here, from the revolutionary sparkling foiled, first introduced in the Love Face palette, to the creamy textured mattes and the ultra shiny metallics. Together, these buttery smooth shades provide maximum color payoff, blending seamlessly to produce vibrant, ultra pigmented, long-lasting, everyday, or bold and dramatic looks. This everyday palette, with its rich shadows, leaves the skin with an optimum texture and comfortable all-day wear for any skin type and tone. And so it's on the website, this is what this palette is, ranging from dark jungle greens to shimmering sunny goldens, warm yellows, and mustard browns. The 15 shaded Yucca eyeshadow palette delivers the ambience of summer to any look with the iconic classic mattes, cream powders, metallics, and sparkling foiled formulas. The palette retails for $69, and it is paraben, cruelty free, and then made in Italy. And it also came with corresponding Macrotech eye crayons. They're gel liners, and it came in 3 colors with the corresponding colors. The first color is Willow for the Macrotech eye gel liner, Willow, Fuchsia, and then I believe the last one is Camu Camu, this light lemony yellow. So let's talk about the palette. The palette itself, the beautiful packaging. I think it's kind of this ombre effect of the browns, earthy browns, oranges, yellows to the greens. It's a matte finish, really beautiful. It's the same size as the bronze palette, the Retro palette and the Glam palette. And there's the other one, which I don't own. It's my Dream palette. But it's definitely the same size as these, which I love these palettes. I love the size. She's finally figured out like the best size for her market. That, you know, she had started off with larger palettes such as these ones, which are just not affordable or accessible to people. This is the brown, what is this? The green brown palette. And then Metropolis, which has a lot of shadows, which was very expensive. So there are 8 creamy mattes in this formula, and they're scattered throughout this palette. So what I'm going to do is and talk about each one, and then I'll swatch it by category actually, because what I had swatched them before, I just went row by row. So the CM creamy mattes are Natasha Denona's signature matte color formula. Formula is creamy to the touch and seamlessly blends on the lid. And then she has 2 colors labeled CP in this palette, which are these 2, I believe. Calathea and Fushi, and these are the richly pigmented wet powder formula that is easy to blend. And her different formulas have always perplexed me, because she's changed her formula throughout the years. And then she has what is called, it's new, it's the sparkling foil, and it's marked as SF. She has 4 sparkling foiled colors in here, shades, which are Plantasia, Komorebi, Elysian, and then Macchia. And then she has kind of what they call, I think it's a metallic, which is only one, and that's the color Ray. And metallics come in multiple textures: foiled, rich in texture, satin, soft finish, metallic. Sparkling contains varying sizes of crushed minerals for pearls for a dazzling effect. I find these are not as like impactful, but there's less texture in here, so there's a less oomph, but there's definitely less fallout on those. So Ray is the only metallic shade. It's this color here. And it has the one that's the least fallout of the shimmery shades, but it has less impact. And I would say I liked using that as an inner corner highlight, or it can be topped off on other colors, or it can just be a less impactful shimmer shade for a daytime look. And then we'll do the CP, and it's Calathea and Fushi. And they definitely feel more wet to the touch, these 2. And so they're like, there's just like a moisture in these. Calathea and then Fushi. And next is the CM. I think it's the cream to matte formula. And I'll go from the top is Acacia and Camu Camu, Tipu, Valley. Okay, so this one is Valley. Then this is Tipu, Camu Camu, and then Acacia. And then we have Citrine, Flax, Ichia, and then Willow. Citrine, Flax, Ichia, and then Willow. And then for the sparkling foil, then I'll put on my hand. This is Plantasia, Komorebi, Elysian, and then Macchia. Plantasia, Komorebi, Elysian, Macchia. And for this eye look, the only shadow I did not get to use was the color Elysian, which is this one. Starting off the demo and the look, one look for each eye, and then using Valley, which is a creamy matte shade for the crease, and it's a lot more pigmented than I thought. So I was trying a new technique of laying down the color first and then buffing it out. and it worked really well. It's a good color. And then going into Calathea, and that is kind of the shade that is supposed to be a little bit more wet to the touch. And it's a really muted moss green. I just wanted to see how it could be really sheared out, but it matches my shirt, which I'm really happy with. So it's a nice olive kind of grungy green. And then just going back with that first brush to buff out the edges. And I really do like that shade Calathea. And then I'm just going in again with Valley just to add back that brownish reddish color. Because I have hooded lids, I always like to add more dimension and layers to maximize the lid space I have up there. And then going into Willow, which is also a creamy matte shade, because I'm curious of how the two green shades in this palette are going to look. So Calathea is more of an olivey, grungy green, whereas Willow, it's a very vibrant blue-based green. So it's really, really vibrant. I would love to use this again for an all-over shade to see how it looks with any of these sparkling foils. And so I'm just placing that in the outer V and then buffing it out. And then going with a Fude brush into Makia, M-A-K-I-A, which is that sparkling foils shade. And it's probably like the one shade in here of the sparkling foil that has a shift of green in it. So there's green, a little bit of gold. And I do notice, although it's beautiful to put on and it looks so wonderful on the eyes, there is a lot of fallout with this shade Makia. So what I'm trying to do is not spread it too much. I'm just trying to pat on Makia as a sparkling foil shade because I'm noticing it's already very crumbly in the pan. And then going into Komorebi, K-O-M-O-R-E-B-I. It's also a sparkling foil shade. And I would say this one is probably more of like gold, like a pale gold with a champagne-y twist to it. It's a very beautiful color as well. But also, again, it has a lot of fallout. And then I'm going into Camu Camu, which is the brightest kind of, think of it as like the popsicle summer yellow as an inner corner highlight or inner corner color. It's so pretty. I really like this color. I'm looking forward to using this shade again, but just by itself with some bright yellow. Maybe that Komorebi would be those two together. And then going into Citrine, which is more of the mustard yellow in this palette, and just wanting to see what it looks on the lower lash. And I'm trying to use as many colors in my looks as possible. And that's the Creamy Matte formula. And then going back into Valley, which is also that Creamy Matte formula to give more dimension. And then Flax, which is also another creamy matte. There's lots of creamy mattes in this palette. It's the deepest shade, I would say, in this palette. And it's so great for liners. I really enjoy it. So I'm showing you what Makia looks like. And it looks like, as you can see here, I'm getting more impact when I actually apply it with my fingers, and she even writes that in materials if you want more of an impact, either wet the brush or use your fingers. Then I'm going into the Macrotech liner. That is $24. I got the color Willow, which is the teal green, which corresponds to the shade Willow, as you can see here. And then there's two other colors as well, Camu Camu and I believe Citrine. And I'm using that as not so much of a tight line, but trying to get as close to my lash line as possible. Using it on top and at the bottom, and then using my BK brush. I love that brush to smudge out that Macrotech liner. It's gel based, so you have about a minute or two to really move the product around, but after that it settles down. So you do have to work pretty quickly with that, but it's smudged really well because it's so emollient. And then I'm going into my House Labs Chartreuse liner, which I think might be a dupe for that Camu Camu liner. And I use that as to tight line at the bottom.
So using the Creamy Matte Tipu, T-I-P-U, I think this is the most interesting Creamy Matte in the formula. So at first it doesn't look like anything, but it's almost like there's 3 different shades with this Creamy Matte. It almost looks like a green, a muted brown, and sometimes I have a hint of yellow. So depending on how much I pack it on, you can see here, it does have some green in there, but initially in the pan, it looks very much like a brown mustard. And then going in with Fushi, F-U-S-H-I, over the lid, another, this is not a creamy matte, this is like a regular CP, which is, I think, it's kind of like a wet matte color, and I wanted to see that over the entire mobile lid. And then I am going into Ixia, yeah, I-X-I-A, Ixia or Ixia, and it's the terracotta orange color. And I'm wanting to use this because I just want to test out, again, all the colors that I can, that's a creamy matte. And then I went into Como Ribai again, the sparkling foil, and I was curious to see what that shade, because it leans yellow champagne, what that would look like over citrine, which is that mustard yellow. And it can be hard to see, but I did get in closely with this look, that it looks kind of the same from far away, but the left eye is more green with a yellow shift and mustard, but the eye on the right is definitely more lemony yellow, because the base is citrine, which is the mustard yellow, and then the Como Ribai is a sparkling foil. And then going into Ray, which is a regular metallic shade, it doesn't have as much fallout, and I'm using that as my inner corner. And then you see me going into Calathea because I'm curious to see how that is going to be as a liner. It doesn't have as much give as the flax color, but it was really nice actually as a base to start the eyeliner look. So going again in with the Macrotech liner in Willow, which is that green teal color, and I'm getting a handle on how to use this eyeliner more because it's gel. There is a lot more give, and I want to wing it out, and it just, that green against the yellow looks so fun. I'm really glad I got that liner because I can do a lot of things with that. And then I go back into Tipu, the original crease color, just to define the edges and carve out my eye look.
So I'm going in with Tipu and then grabbing Calathea for some depth here. And then I'm grabbing some of Valley, this brown shade. To deepen the crease a bit more. And then because these sparkling foils are so flaky, I'm actually trying something new today. I'm using my Pat McGrath Intensifies wand, which is basically like a glitter glue stick. A Refer 21 brush. This is supposed to be really good for packing on color. So I'm going to grab Elysian, which I did not use yet. So it's pretty flaky, these sparkling foil shades. They're really pretty on, but boy are they're really flaky. Okay, and then flipping my brush over and then grabbing that Plantasia shade. And I'm not going to show you me dipping into it because these sparkling foils need to stay horizontal or else they're going to flake all over my face and on my clothes. I'm just using that on the inner corner, and it's interesting that it has like I think this is like the duochrome where it's green, a little bit of peach, a little bit of blue-green. Okay, great. There's less fallout when I use the glitter Intensifies wand. And then going into Valley, going into this flax color, and I really like this as a liner. Just smokes out the look a little bit more. So I'm going to finish the other eye with the same look and then I'll be back. Okay, so I finished up the look with the MaCrotech gel liner. The green MaCrotech, the willow color for my eyeliner, and then mascara. Ran some gel through my eyebrows just to freshen that up. And then grabbed this new Charlotte Tilbury Pinkgasm Beauty Light Wand in Sunset, Pinkgasm Sunset. It was pretty intense, so I had to just bring it down a little bit, but have that. And then the Dior lip gloss in this color. I'll put all the items below, but this is a really beautiful color for my eyes. I wanted to try the cool tones on this palette, so I pretty much stuck to this quadrant here, just using these three colors here, then a little bit of this one, the Calathea, and then this is a great liner color. And this is the final look, and it's pretty smoky. And yeah, that's the look of it being a little bit more cool tone, but some of the earthy tones as well. So although it's a very cool tone, kind of grungy color, the Elysian, I'll show you that color here, with the colors next to it, it just adds a really nice smoky grungy color. So that is the look. And what's different about this look is actually I had so much fallout yesterday, I wanted to try something different. So I used the Pat McGrath Intensifies wand to put on my eyes before I put that sparkling foil down, which helped immensely, but there is still fallout on that formula. So just so you know, there is definitely going to be fallout. So if that bothers you, just know that you might want to do your eye makeup first and then your base. I've noticed some eye irritation. It's actually a little bit red. So even if I'm using that glitter glue or Intensifies wand, and this is something I've heard about Natasha Denona's formula, sometimes the formula can irritate the eyes, and it's something that I'm just watching to see if her formula is going to irritate my eyes. So that is the final look. Tell me what you think. Okay, so I hope those two looks were helpful, and I'll show you up close. I'll get in close so you can see the two looks. This is look number 1, and then look number 2. And then for my base, and all the makeup I'm using are going to be linked below. On my face, I actually use the Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin Foundation in 20.5. Bronzer, I used the Chanel Cream Bronzer in 395 Soleil Tan Deep Bronze. For my lips, I used the Lisa Eldridge Velvet Sorcery Lipstick and then the corresponding gloss. Let's talk about if there's anything similar in the Natasha Denona realm. The closest that people were talking about were that it was very similar to the Gold palette or perhaps Metropolis. So this is Metropolis, and I'll put those up side by side. I'm not going to do swatches because it would be a very long video. I think these are very different formulas. The Metropolis palette has a lot of shimmery shades. They have some cream to powder, but it's a different vibe altogether. Yes, there are some greens like this one, but there's a lot of oranges and other colors in here this is definitely more curated to yellows, greens, and earth tones, where this is more about the Gilded Age, this Metropolis palette. And I don't think they're similar at all. I think actually the formula is a lot different, even especially with the sparkling foiled formula, which is a new one, apparently she's saying. But I could see where the vibes are where people were saying it looks like Metropolis and then the Gold palette had a baby. I used to have the Gold palette, and I actually got rid of it because I just felt that a lot of the looks were really similar and redundant. Okay, I'm gonna put my hair up because it's pretty warm. And then she does have her green and brown palette, which is this one, which I think is totally different. This is an older formula, and again the vibes are much different. So these greens are run much more cool in this palette for the top one, the green brown, even though there's brown in there. but you can see where those greens are very much more cool tone, where this is more like grungy greens and earthed and very warm. And it's also a different formula. Where I think I really see similarities are actually not Natasha Denona, but 3 other palettes that I have. This palette reminds me a lot like the Eczema French Industrial palette, and I'll put those side by side. So I picked the Industrial palette just because it has a lot more greens to it, and I've done a lot of looks with this Industrial palette, but I think actually the Industrial palette is much more diverse and versatile in its use than this palette, even though there are less number of pans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 14 pans in here, and this is 15. It's 1 less, right? So there's 1 less pan, but there's more diversity of looks with this Industrial palette by Eczema French versus this one. And then when I was with this look, at least, this really reminds me, this Yucca palette really reminds me of 2 palettes I already own, and those are the Melt Cosmetic palettes, which are, it really reminds me of the Mary Jane palette because of the grunginess and the cool tones of these over here, mixed with some browns. Here, I'll just do a really quick swatch of these. And then the Gemini palette by Melt Cosmetics. And then I will try to put some looks of these colors that I did with these palettes up here so you can see. So here's the look I did with the Gemini palette, and it really reminds me, this Yucca palette really reminds me of kind of this palette the most, the Gemini palette. And I actually like this palette a lot. I find not everyone likes Melt Cosmetics. I actually just really like this formula. I love the curation. So it reminds me of 2 palettes I already have. Why don't we talk about my first impressions of the palette? Okay, these are just my first impressions of the palette. I haven't seen anyone's reviews, but I've seen people's looks on Instagram and just like screenshots and whatnot. My initial thoughts is that it's very flaky. Like, just literally as I was swatching and using the palette, I actually had to clean up my vanity area twice because these shadows are just, they're breaking up as I use them. So when I'm swatching or going into the pan, they break up a bit. I think these are beautiful looks, but it kind of bugs me how flaky this palette is already. And again, this is just my first use of it, and I just think over time this is going to get a lot messier. So I don't know if I can show you without flashing you, but there's a bunch of stuff, particles on here already. There's starting to be fallout everywhere in the pan. Specifically, what is this? The color Tipu, which are the creamy mattes. The creamy mattes are a little bit crumbly, and they're just, I can tell, they're like, there's a lot of fallout in that formula. I think these sparkling foil shades are really beautiful, but they are hella crumbly. Like this one, even when I'm swatching it, it's so, you see how it's starting to fall apart. It's so crumbly that it looks like I've been using this for a while, and I've just dipped into it like 3 times already, and this is like my first time. I think the sparkling foil formula is really, really beautiful and impactful, but I have to always let you know the truth. I'm always going to let you know that. So for this eye, I used the Macchia color, and then this one, Koramai or Korabai here on the inner, and they both had crazy fallout. So I don't know if you can see it, but I have like flecks of that sparkling foil all over my face. So if fallout's gonna bug you, you might want to think twice about getting this palette. If you're the kind of person who's like, I want a beautiful look, I don't care if there's fallout, then just, you're not going to care about like me saying that. But if it's going to bug you, that there's a lot of fallout, just kind of proceed with caution. I think it just really might be this cream de matte formula and the sparkling shades. So I've used these so much, and like, look how clean and intact these palettes are. And I've used these a lot, and like you can see very little like dirtiness or fallout in the pans. Especially this one, I love that shade, but like it's still intact. The Natasha Denona Bronze palette I've used a lot, and this is the one that has the most fallout of all the palettes I have for Natasha Denona, but it's still intact. This, as you can see, it's like starting here. Let me go this way so you can see. I think it's the sparkling foil formula that is really, it's just really moist or delicate, that it's going to get really crumbly through time. It's already crumbly now, so I just think through time, I think this palette is going to be a flaky mess because it already kind of made a mess on my entire vanity, more than any Natasha Denona palette I've ever used. So that's the first thing. It's kind of irritating. Actually, some of the flakes are on my shirt here. I think it's a really pretty color story. I'm always going to tell you like what my honest opinion is. I think it's really pretty, but I think I could have gotten the same looks from these two palettes. So if you're wanting to save money and you have the Melt Cosmetics Mary Jane and Gemini palette, I actually don't think you need the Natasha Denona palette. And I actually haven't had flake or fallout with this quality of shadows. This one, I'm a little worried how this is gonna wear through time. And yeah, I will continue to use it and let you know. Again, let me just show you, like close up if I can show you. This is like starting to get really crumbly here and here. And I usually don't experience that with my eyeshadows just because, and even now I'm like tapping it because there's like fallout down here. I usually don't experience that with the eyeshadows I buy because I usually buy luxury high-end eyeshadows, and the crumbliness that I see here today are ones I only experience with like indie shadows that I end up like reselling or just giving away. Like Adept Cosmetics, for example, was a crumbly hot mess for me and I didn't like that shadow, so I gave it away. So I don't know. I think I've said enough of what I'm gonna say about it, like it having a lot of fallout. So I was really surprised on this having not just the sparkling foil having so much fallout, but just the creamy mattes have a lot of like crumbliness in the pan as well. Natasha Denona released 3 of these in the mustard, yellow, and the green. And I decided just to get the willow because I already have not the same formula, but the Chartreuse House Labs liner, which is very similar to the Camu Camu. It's that one, and I use that in a look. And then I think the formula for Natasha Denona's Macro Tech is okay. It's very, it's a lot of gel and a lot of give that you can smudge looks beforehand. So I do like them. They're not my favorite, but I wanted to try the green because I love green eyeliners and shadows. I had high hopes for it, and I'm a bit put off by that it has so much fallout, and I'll keep using it and pin a comment below. The foil, the color that I like the best is this bottom one, the Macchia, but it is a hot mess already, so as you can see. And it's starting to have a divot in there. And again, I usually don't have that happen with my shadows. Like, I'm like having to push it back to press it in so that it's not super flaky. And then even when I put the sparkling foil to swatch on my hand, it took 4 washes to take off like the residual sparkle. So I'm not necessarily convinced of this new formula. I think it looks beautiful on the eyes, but it's crumbling in the pan and it like leaves a lot of fallout. So I'm not really keen on that. The looks I think are pretty. These 2 looks look very similar to me, and I'm filming right when it's starting to get dark. And when I went out where I have better light in the bathroom, I noticed the look looks very yellowy green and not green. And so the only 2 green colors truly in this palette are this color here, and this is more like a blue-based green. If you can see, there's a little bit more blue in there. This is more of the grungy green. And I just think that if you really want a palette with more greens in it, I have actually a green eyeshadow series I think that Melt Cosmetics palette has much more variety of greens in there, and the Industrial palette by Isamaya French. But those are just my thoughts. I was hoping this would be a lot more green, but it's definitely leaning more yellow gold in my experience. At least on my coloring is just showing up as more yellow, if that makes sense. Hence the gold. I don't hate it, but I was hoping for more green. Okay, so that's my first quick impressions, beauty fam. I'm not necessarily over the moon about this palette. I had high expectations, but yeah, I'm just getting Fallout City with her, as you can see, and it's bugging me a bit because it's just all over my vanity. Okay, so let me know if you've seen other reviews of people talking about the fallout on this palette, or if you have this palette and if you've experienced any fallout. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, maybe I got a bad batch. I'm just kind of curious of how your experience is. And then let me know what you think, and then comment and like below. Let me know what you think, if you've seen more fallout in your experience, or that I just have to suck it up and that's just Natasha Denona. But I would say, like, because there's so much fallout, I don't know if I would want to wear this during the day because it actually kind of got into my contacts and all over. And the last thing I want to do is go to work and have like sparkles on my face when I'm at work. So that's just something to note. That was helpful, beauty fam. And then comment and like below, subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, please be very kind to yourself and others and just be you. Until the next video, take care, beauty fam. Bye.